हेलो एवरीवन। मैं आशा करता हूँ कि आप सब सुरक्षित और स्वस्थ हैं। आई होप all of you are safe and healthy and taking good care of yourselves, your parents, your elders and everyone at your home. Today's editorial has been taken from the Indian Express newspaper. ठीक है, editorial का title है The Way Forward. Despite fiscal concerns, more government support is needed to mitigate economic fallout. Center must spell out a strategy. So this is today's editorial that we will be discussing in a short while. But before proceeding with this editorial, let's look at few other newspapers and more articles in this newspaper that need to be read to get a comprehensive understanding of whatever is going on around in the world. ठीक है, तो ये तो हो गया पहला editorial. ठीक है, the main article of this newspaper is going back to a new school. Post-pandemic, a shift in mindset will be needed to teach and learn. ठीक है, people who are interested in learning about the outcomes or the situation in which education will be carried out post-pandemic, so they can go through this article. Not very helpful or not very important as per exam point of view currently. तो इसलिए मैंने इसको येलो से मार्क नहीं किया. ठीक है. The next is pay the piper. Regulators in Australia and France show the way. Dominant digital platforms should not freeload on media content. Is important, but when I read this, I thought there could be a better insightful article on this. So for now, I have not highlighted this. Maybe in future, if some more insightful and more comment included article comes up, so I'll definitely put that up to be discussed. Ambedkar in our crisis. Even amid pandemic, caste atrocities continue. Representation is key. ठीक है, not very important from the exam point of view. However, you can read it for your own expansion of knowledge and views. Oil price crash may wreak economic havoc, but there are ways of making the best of a bad time. This article basically talks about how you can make the best out of this crisis, how individuals can hoard oil and sell it later when the prices rise. This article basically talks about that. So not very nice article, but yes, you should read it for the knowledge sake. Next page is the ideas page. इसमें एक article है an unexpected turning point. Post lockdown, India's economy should not lapse into permit raj. At this crossroads, missteps can change nation's trajectory for decades to come. So obviously, as you can read and draw a conclusion from this line, is that this is an article which consists of warnings and all those things that the government should not be doing after the lockdown ends. ठीक है, this is written by Kaushik Basu. So do give this a read and try to make notes of it. ठीक है. The next article is a test for a nation. India, its people and its leadership is rising to the challenge of the moment. You should read this article also. This is written by Ramesh Pokhriyal Nishank, who is the Union Minister for HRD. If any minister writes an article, it is worth reading because it contains all those policy angles, all those factual angles that usually others miss. So this article is a must for today also. Next page in the Indian Express is IE Explained. Now this page comes with all those explanatory articles about whatever is going on. The latest in our basket of current affairs is the Jio Facebook deal that happened. ठीक है? So what the Jio deal means for Reliance and Facebook. This is a very simple explanatory article meant for the common man to understand what is going on. This is in the format of questions and answers. You can see what does the deal mean for Reliance Industries, what does the deal mean for Facebook, what does it mean for India's internet ecosystem, what does it mean for Reliance's data localization principles. All these basic questions have been answered. Once you go through these, you'll have a better understanding of why this deal was struck and what are the positive or negative consequences or benefits or other things that might arise from this deal. The next article is why India tightened FDI rules and why it is China that is upset. ठीक है, इस आर्टिकल में there are two, this is also one other article in the question answer format. There are two questions very important to be paid special attention to. First is what is India's argument, and the second is is there any ground for the argument that India's move is discriminatory. तो ये दो क्वेश्चंस पे ज़्यादा ध्यान देना होगा. द रेस्ट आर ऑल फैक्चुअल क्वेश्चंस आंसर्ड हियर. ठीक है. द नेक्स्ट आर्टिकल इन दिस न्यूज़पेपर इज बिहाइंड कंटेनमेंट इन केरला, रोबस्ट हेल्थ केयर सिस्टम, इफेक्टिव स्ट्रैटेजीज. तो व्हाट इज द केरला मॉडल ऑफ पब्लिक हेल्थ केयर has been described in this article. You should definitely give it a read and try to draw the most out of these articles. So these are the articles in the Indian Express that need reading today. Next, let's move on to Economic Times. There are 1, 2, 3 articles that are important. 2 out of these 3 articles are related to the Jio Facebook deal. ठीक है, one editorial and one lead article. तो इन दोनों को पढ़ना ज़रूरी है. This editorial article, the Reliance Jio Facebook deal, talks about all the negative aspects that may arise as consequences of this deal and what needs to be taken care of. See, it talks about threats, the second threat, the first threat, the third threat. The third risk is the data monopoly and all these things. So another bunch of warnings that the editor has given against such deal and that this deal needs to be regulated and monitored by the government and all that things. So do give these articles a reading. There's one more editorial, not an editorial, this is an article written by Sai Venkateshwaran and Manoj K. Vijay, a rescue raft for sinking NBFCs or non-banking finance companies. So these also, this article also definitely deserves a reading. Okay, so these are articles in the Economic Times today. Let's move on to Business Standard. This is definitely a very analytical newspaper that presents very valuable articles. The first article in the Business Standard is focused on capital formation policy. ठीक है, इसमें लिखा हुआ है, it is vital to ensure that the clamor for suspending bankruptcy laws does not translate into reality. इस क्राइसिस के सिचुएशन में अगर आपने बैंकरप्सी लॉज को ही हटा दिया सो दैट बैंक्स आर एबल टू लेंड मोर एंड ऑल दोज लॉक्ड अप कैपिटल कैन बी रिलीज, getting rid of those bankruptcy laws can be another source of the NPA problem going even further or exacerbating. So this is an article on that definitely deserves a reading today. Why it may be a long haul. The tension between livelihood and public health will not disappear for a while, and while it remains, chief ministers will take their own call on how to act. So this article is based on public health, very relevant given the current scenario. Along with this article, there is a podcast if you're interested in listening to podcasts where discussions, valuable and insightful discussions take place regarding all those current affairs. There is a podcast that I regularly listen to. It is called the PRAGATI podcast. It is hosted by Pawan Srinath, and the latest episode was a conversation with Yamini Iyer. Now Yamini Iyer is the president and chief executive of Center for Policy Research in New Delhi. Okay, they had a discussion on the topic which also was the name of that podcast episode, and that was what does it take for a mission mode health response to COVID-19 in India. She started the conversation with defining what is public health in the first place, and it is a very insightful conversation that and a discussion that should be heard also. So after you read this article or before you read this article, you should also, if possible, go through that podcast. I'll leave a link in the description box so that you can easily find it. Next article in the Business Standard would be the first editorial, One Stop Shop, Jio Facebook deal again. That explainer in the Indian Express newspaper, that editorial and a lead article in the Economic Times, another editorial in the Business Standard, All these show the importance of this deal and how big this deal is, and how effective it is supposed to be. So all the consequences of this deal and what changes it will bring to the Indian e-commerce or telecom or payments, all these markets is being discussed in all these articles. So reading all these articles will give you a very comprehensive understanding of this deal and its effects. Okay? The lead article can be avoided for the time being. At war with the virus, the military should supplement its arsenal with dual-use assets that would create capabilities for handling situations like COVID. Okay, we can skip this for now. The next is the oil glut. The crash in futures may not benefit India. अब कल के आर्टिकल में हमने पढ़ा था कि there will be good and there will be bad. ठीक है, we'll have to be prepared for the bad consequences also. This article in the Business Standard today says that it will only be bad. There is nothing good in it for India. Why? Because there is a demand crisis and there is a shortage nahi, there is a fall in the excessive fall in the price of crude oil. That means the import bill of India will be very less. So these are not good things, because after all these things, the storage capacity is not much. Okay? India is already 95%. All those storage capacity, all those storage tankers in India are already 95% full, and there is no way you can store more oil. So even if it is very cheap to buy, and there you cannot really benefit from it. That is what is being discussed in this article. Okay? The fiscal response challenge is another article that needs to be read to understand what the economic situation right now is globally, in India, elsewhere, everywhere. Okay? These are the articles which you need to read from the Business Standard. Now let's move to Financial Express. There is again a big editorial on the need a clear post-corona exit strategy. Okay? So a similar article will be discussed today from the Indian Express newspaper. This one editorial article, Still Waters to Slow Boil, is a must for today. इसका subheading है, every month of full lockdown leads to a 5.4 loss of gross value added, or GVA. Half of the economy will be impacted by the partial lockdown, and the monthly loss will be 4% of GVA. Now, even in this article by Pranjul Bhandari, who is the Chief Economist India for HSBC Global Research, she has answered 5 questions in this article to clear the basics. The first is, what was the national lockdown able to flatten the COVID-19 curve? Second question is, what will the growth or cost of the lockdown likely to be? What sectors are likely to gain as activity in partial what sectors are likely to gain as activities partially restarted? Are authorities inclined to stimulate further? And how large could the stimulus package be? So all these basic questions have been answered in this article, and these deserve a strict reading today. So I'd suggest you to go through this article and try to make notes out of it, because these things will be happening in the future and you will be reminded of this article in the coming months. So this is one very important article to be read today. Other than this, there is one article, that is Corona Crisis Prompts Reimagining of Justice Delivery. So how judicial reforms need to take place in this crisis, and how justice should be served and judicial services should be served is a challenge, and this is the perfect time to bring about reforms in that sector. This has been discussed in this article, which also needs to be read. Another article is Seeds of Rural Recovery, which argues that since there is a mass exodus of migrant laborers back to their home, or there is a repatriation of migrant laborers, there will be enough laborers available in the villages now, okay, in the rural economy. So these villagers, these returned migrants should be used by the state governments to better the rural infrastructure and employ more of them to the rural economy services. So this is what a good idea has been presented in this article, which needs to be read. Another article, or the last article, is lives versus livelihoods. Now, failing to control COVID-19 spread means even helicopter money won't be sufficient to provide relief, let alone economic revival. So this is a speculative article which will talk about what has been falling short and what needs to be done even more, or with more vigor, to get over this crisis. So this falls under the column of fine balance. This also needs strict reading today. So these are the articles which you need to read today. The Hindu newspaper articles have already been presented in the previous video, so you can go through these articles, go through these news, and prepare your notes wisely. So we'll be starting with this article, The Way Forward, presented in the Indian Express. This also deals with the current economic scenario and how the government can go through this and come out with victory. So let's start with reading this article, The Way Forward. Despite fiscal concerns, more government support is needed to mitigate economic fallout. Mitigate करते हैं तो किसी भी बुरी चीज़ का असर कम करते हैं. To reduce the bad effects of something is to mitigate. ठीक है. Fallout are the bad consequences of something. Something happened and there were bad consequences is fallout. So despite fiscal concerns, despite fiscal stands for the finance of the government. So despite fiscal concerns, more government support is needed to mitigate economic fallout. Center must spell out a strategy. To spell out is to clearly explain to somebody who is not able to grasp everything that you say. To explain something, to break it down to very small pieces and make it very easily understandable by any group or any person is to spell out. ठीक है, तो center must spell out a strategy. Center must clearly explain that there is a long term or a short term or whatever kind of strategy that it is going to follow to mitigate with the economic fallout. ठीक है, it is difficult at this stage to accurately assess the cost of the disruption in economic activities due to the lockdown, but it will be severe. ठीक है, लिखा हुआ है, at this stage to accurately assess the cost of the disruption is difficult. But one thing that we know is that it will be severe. Accurately is something that is very exact. Accurately दो वर्ड से बना है, add and cura, दोनों ही लैटिन वर्ड्स हैं. add and cura मिलाकर accurately बना है. अब cura का मतलब होता है carefully or with care. So if you add care to something, you will do it very properly and exactly. Hence the word accurate and hence the word accurately. ठीक है, assess करते हैं तो evaluate करते हैं या to find out the exact value, not the exact value, to find out whether something is valuable or not. To evaluate something is to assess. ठीक है, there is minor difference, but here assess word is better suited. So it is difficult at this stage to accurately assess the cost of the disruption in economic activities due to the lockdown, but it will be severe. As reported in this paper, according to some estimates, the 33-day lockdown in this financial year, April 1st to May 3rd, which essentially translate to a loss of 23 full working days, will lead to an economic contraction this financial year. ठीक है, अगर सिर्फ इस financial year की बात की जाए तो there has been a loss of 23, there will be a loss of 23 full working days. ठीक है, so and that will lead to economic contraction. To be sure, the government has relaxed the lockdown restrictions on some activities post April 20th of April के बाद कुछ restrictions को relax किया गया था, and that has been said in this line. But a pickup in these segments is likely to be muted, driven in part by disruptions in supply chains, labor and logistical issues, and the fall in end consumer demand. क्या लिखा हुआ है? But a pickup in these segments is likely to be muted. ठीक है, आपने कुछ segments का जो restrictions था उसको आपने खोल दिया. You let them loose, you let them work and perform. but a pickup in these to pick up activity, to pick up growth in these segments is likely to be muted. ठीक है, होगा ही नहीं उतना ज़्यादा. ड्रिवन इन पार्ट बाय डिसरप्शंस इन सप्लाई चेन. क्यों नहीं होगा? बिकॉज देर आर स्टिल डिसरप्शंस इन सप्लाई चेन, देर आर डिसरप्शंस इन लेबर एंड लॉजिस्टिकल इशूज. लॉजिस्टिकल इशूज रिलेट्स टू द ट्रांसपोर्ट ऑफ गुड्स from one place to another, or labor from one place to another, and the fall in end consumer demand. There is no end consumer demand only. People are staying at their home, eating what they have at their homes, spending very less. So there is negligible end consumer demand. There are disruptions in the supply chain, there are disruptions in the labor and logistical issues, which is why even those segments which were opened after April 20th will not see much growth or will not pick up much activity anytime soon. Even after the lockdown is fully lifted, economic activities are unlikely to return to normal in the near term. ठीक है, कुछ समय तक तो भाई, even after the lockdown is lifted completely, as of for now we know that 3rd May is going to be the last day for this national lockdown, and if it truly ends completely on that day, even after that economic activities it will be very difficult to return to normal situation in the near or in the middle terms. The impact of job and income losses, especially those in the informal sector, consumer behavior, discretionary spending may take a hit, risk aversion by firms and banks, and continuation of social distancing norms, among others, will determine how economic activity shapes up after the lockdown. ठीक है, what factors will determine whether economic activity will improve or not, or at what pace it will be going on, has been written in this line. The impact of job and income losses, especially those in the informal sector. ठीक है, इनफॉर्मल सेक्टर में भी जो कुछ भी जॉब लॉसेज हुआ है, जो इनकम लॉसेज हुआ है, वो कंज्यूमर बिहेवियर जिसमें कि डिस्क्रेशनरी स्पेंडिंग हैज़ टेकन अ हिट, मे टेक अ हिट. ठीक है, डिस्क्रेशनरी स्पेंडिंग, डिस्क्रेशनरी इज समथिंग एट योर ओन विल, दैट यू डिसाइड बाय योरसेल्फ इज डिस्क्रेशनरी. तो कंज्यूमर, whether they decide themselves or not, whether to buy something or not, to consume something or not, is consumer behavior at the discretionary spending end. ठीक है, so this may take a hit, this may be affected in a bad way. Risk aversion by firms and banks. Risk aversion का मतलब होता है to avoid risk. ठीक है, एक वीडियो में हमने देखा था जब ये वर्ड आया था कि aversion means when you are trying to avoid some risk that is heading towards you. ठीक है, एक सीधा रास्ता है, उसमें आप और आपके एक दोस्त, एक मित्र पैदल चल कर जा रहे हैं. बोथ ऑफ यू आर मेंटेनिंग सोशल डिस्टेंस, 2 feet away फ्रॉम ईच अदर, वॉकिंग इन द सेम डायरेक्शन, और सामने से एक बैल आ रहा है दौड़ते हुए. यू नो इट इज़ गोइंग टू हिट यू. ठीक है, वो कहावत है ना, आप बैल मुझे मार. इन दैट सेम वे दैट ऑक्स इज कमिंग टूवर्ड्स यू टू हिट यू. When you don't move anywhere and let that ox hit you, you are not risk averse. But अगर आप कहते हैं कि आप बैल मेरे दोस्त को मार, that becomes risk aversion for you. ठीक है, रिस्क को टालना. So risk aversion by banks and firms and banks and continuation of social distancing norms. तो ये कुछ चीज़ें हैं, जॉब लॉस, इनकम लॉस, कंज्यूमर बिहेवियर में चेंजेस, हाउ रिस्क अवर्स आर फर्म्स एंड बैंक्स, and is social distancing continued or not. These things will come in combination determine how economic activity shapes up after the lockdown. Much will also depend on the depth and breadth of the policy response. Government कैसी policy लेकर आती है, even that will affect to a greater extent how the economic activity will shape up after the lockdown. The RBI has undertaken a series of measures aimed at easing the economic and financial fallout. RBI ने तो काफ़ी कुछ किया है ना, रेपो रेट कम किया, स्टिमुलस दिया, वेज एंड मीन्स एडवांसेस बढ़ा दिया. All that steps have been taken by RBI. However, the central government's response so far has been limited. ठीक है, सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट ने ज़्यादा कुछ नहीं किया अभी तक. इंडिया हैज़ वन ऑफ द स्ट्रिक्टेस्ट लॉकडाउन्स इन द वर्ल्ड विथ वन ऑफ द थिनेस्ट कवर्स ऑफ सोशल प्रोटेक्शन. सोशल प्रोटेक्शन के नाम पे ज़्यादा कुछ है ही नहीं इंडिया में. ठीक है, जैसा कि हम सब जानते हैं, देयर इज़ अ बिग लार्ज मेजर informal sector, which is not covered under the social protection schemes that are provided. So major chunk of the labor force is out of that social protection. Whatever social protection is provided or is available to other people who are in the formal sector is also very thin. So it is very difficult to say that if lockdown is lifted and all these people are still affected badly, there will be social protection for them. There is nothing of that sorts in India. Okay? The first government package aimed at ensuring a steady supply of food grains and easing of cash woes of vulnerable sections. The first government package, okay, aimed at ensuring a steady supply of food grains and easing of cash woes or cash troubles of vulnerable sections. तो जो पहला पैकेज था वो उनका टारगेट था भाई फूड ग्रेन्स के सप्लाई को स्टडी रखना है, और जो वल्नरेबल सेक्शन है, जो डेली वेज अर्नर्स हैं, उनका जो भी कैश ट्रबल्स है उनको सॉल्व करना. देयर वर DBTs मेड बाय चीफ मिनिस्टर्स टू द बैंक अकाउंट्स ऑफ laborers, daily wage earners in the beginning of the lockdown. ठीक है, so all these things happened, but these are very less compared to what RBI has done. But with investment activity and exports expected to remain depressed and the economy likely to be largely reliant on government spending and restricted household consumption, more fiscal support is needed. ठीक है, इन्वेस्टमेंट एक्टिविटी और एक्सपोर्ट्स जो हैं वो तो अभी डिप्रेस्ड रहेंगे, बिकॉज देयर वोंट बी प्रोडक्शन, देयर वोंट बी मच डिमांड, so exports will be down. Investment will be down because there won't be new factories needed to be made or upscaling needed to be done and all those things. So these things are going to remain depressed. Economy is likely to be largely reliant on government spending. Whatever government spends, whatever government injects into the economy will be the sole source, you can say, of whatever economic activity will be going on. And restricted household consumptions. So there will be a restriction on household consumption. Since people won't have earned regularly, their consumption will go down. Okay? There will also be fear of consuming from, there is obviously a phobia that has come out because of this virus, and people are restricting themselves to consuming at home and only homemade items. So overall consumption, household consumption will also be restricted for a while, and because of all these things, fiscal support is needed by the government. There are fiscal concerns. The combination of a sharp slowdown in growth and government tax revenues will itself push up the fiscal deficit beyond what has been pegged to maintain current levels of spending. ठीक है? The combination of a sharp slowdown in growth and government tax revenue. So growth में कमी आ गई है और टैक्स रेवेन्यू में भी कमी आ गई है. बोथ विल रिजल्ट इन अ हायर फिस्कल डेफिसिट. ठीक है, ग्रोथ नहीं हो रहा तो आपका इनकम नहीं बढ़ रहा, और टैक्स रेवेन्यू नहीं आ रहा तो आपका इनकम और भी ज़्यादा नहीं आ रहा. जो पहले से आ रहा था वो भी नहीं आ रहा, जो ग्रो करना था वो भी नहीं हो रहा. सो द फिस्कल डेफिसिट विल गो इवन बियॉन्ड बिलो what you had thought or what you had calculated. To peg is to calculate. ठीक है, to calculate the level of something is to peg. तो आपने जो करंट लेवल गवर्नमेंट स्पेंडिंग का था उसको अगर हम मेंटेन करने के लिए आपने जो फिस्कल डेफिसिट का रेंज तय किया था, इट विल ऑब्वियसली क्रॉस इट एंड गो टुवर्ड्स द नेगेटिव साइड. सो एड टू दिस द रिक्वायरमेंट टू सपोर्ट द इकोनॉमी एंड द डेफिसिट विल वाइडन फर्दर. ठीक है, द सीवियरिटी ऑफ द स्लो डाउन नेसेसिटेट्स मोर गवर्नमेंट सपोर्ट. द severity of the slowdown, how big a slowdown this is, that will obviously need more government spending, and they will obviously need more government support. In fact, government spending may well have to be front loaded. A front loaded कहने का मतलब है most of the part done in the beginning. If there is a process, if there is a protocol of doing something, and most of the things are done in the first half or in the beginning of that process, it is called a front loaded process. इसलिए कह रहा है कि in fact गवर्नमेंट स्पेंडिंग में वेल हैव टू बी फ्रंट लोडेड, कि भाई आप वेट ना करें कि हाँ धीरे धीरे पैसे देते रहेंगे, धीरे धीरे सेक्टर्स को बूस्ट करते रहेंगे. नहीं, वॉट एवर स्टिमुलस यू हैव टू प्रोवाइड, द मेजर चंक ऑफ दैट शुड बी प्रोवाइडेड ड्यूरिंग द फर्स्ट फेज ऑफ दीज revival strategy that you may have for the economy. As soon as the lockdown ends, as soon as you start reviving the economy or economic activities, put in most of the stimulus at that time. That is front loaded. Sectors which have been hit the hardest, such as MSMEs or micro, small and medium enterprises, airlines, hotels, exports, will have to be provided relief. ठीक है, इन सेक्टर्स को तो रिलीफ देना पड़ेगा. फेलियर टू डू सो विल रिजल्ट इन जॉब लॉसेज एंड अ राइज इन बैंकरप्सीज. दिवालिया हो जाएंगे. ठीक है, तो क्योंकि दीज सेक्टर्स आर द मोस्ट अफेक्टेड फॉर नाउ, एज मैंशनड इन द स्टेटमेंट, there will be job losses, there will be rise in bankruptcies, there will be throttling of the financial system. Throttle is to choke. ठीक है, throttle, automobile engineers or other engineers may know, throttle is that part of the automobile engine that maintains the flow of fuel in the engine. ठीक है, उस पर डिपेंड करता है कि गाड़ी कितनी तेज भागने वाली है. ठीक है, so throttle on when seen negatively can also minimize the fuel flow and that can choke the engine. ठीक है, so इसलिए throttle as verb becomes to choke something. ठीक है, so there will be throttling of the financial system or the banking system, making even a gradual recovery more difficult. ठीक है, अगर आपने MSMEs, airlines, hotels, exports, इन सबको रिलीफ नहीं दिया तो इन सेक्टर्स में जॉब लॉसेस होंगे, इन सेक्टर्स में बैंकरप्सीज बढ़ जाएंगी, इन सेक्टर में जो भी कैश फ्लो था, जो भी फाइनेंशियल सिस्टम इस्टेब्लिश था, वो और ज़्यादा चोक हो जाएगा और जो कुछ भी ग्रेजुअल रिकवरी होनी थी वो भी नहीं हो पाएगी. द सेंटर may want to keep the power dry for the unknowns that may yet arise and may favor opting for several rounds of measures, calibrating its response as the situation unfolds. ठीक है, यहाँ पे ये पाउडर होना चाहिए था. कीप द पाउडर ड्राई इज अ फ्रेज दैट इज यूज टू मीन दैट you want to be ready for doing something, you want to be able to have enough resources around you that when time comes you are able to do that. ठीक है, to keep the powder dry has come from that fable or from that scenario where cowboys used to fight using guns, or when you are any soldier or anyone who is handling a gun and you want to keep or a bomb and you want to keep all your resources ready, you don't want the powder to be wet when the enemy comes to attack you, because the powder can only be burnt, the gunpowder can only be burnt when it is dry. So basically it means to be ready with your resources. The center may want to be ready with your resources for the unknowns or for the unknown scenarios that may yet arise and may favor opting for several rounds of measures, calibrating its response as the situation unfolds. Basically ये लाइन ये कह रहा है कि the center should be ready to adapt to new things or new challenges that may arise while recovering from this crisis and reviving the economy. ठीक है, calibrate करना is to make corrections or to adjust, to fine tune. But it is also necessary for it to spell out a broad strategy on how it intends to support the economy. This statement might seem a very simple and very short sensed, but actually it means that the public, these sectors and all the people of this country need to know that there is a particular strategy in the minds of the government. Only then will everything fall in place when you are actually executing all these reforms. ठीक है, that is why you need to spell it out. That is why you need to explain to the entire population that these are the things the government intends to do in the future to revive the economy, and that everybody has their roles to play. If there will be confusion, people will of course divert from what they need to do, and people may not turn up, or the sectors may not turn up, industries may not turn up at the right time if called on suddenly. So that is why the author is, or the editor is saying that the broad strategy needs to be spelled out by the government. Okay, so this is what today's article was about. It talks about what challenges are there to revive the economy and what needs to be done basically. So I hope you understood this article. I'll put one or two questions in the description box so that you can answer and get a more clearer understanding of what this article talks about. So thank you so much. Have a good day. This is me signing off for today.